Good evening. This evening's meeting. The minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of March 2016 have been laid on the table for half an hour before the meeting. May I sign them as a true record? Thank you. I'll sign them later with your approval. Apologies for absence, as we're all here. There can't be any. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Paul Wenham has declared an interest in agenda item 8 this evening, and he will leave the room for the consideration of that item.
Thank you very much.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
These televisions are not working.
I'm aware of that, but the webcast is working.
The webcast is working. It's just there's a fault on the internal transmission, it would appear. I can see myself over there on that screen. There's one here, but that's all. Thank you. Questions from members of the public. Item 4, there are none, I assume.
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Item 5 is the forward programme set on pages 9 till 12. Councillor Williamson, I think you wish to speak.
Thank you very much, Leader. The point I was going to raise was related to the East Street funding. I presume many of the members will appreciate that in last week's Farnham Herald it quoted Councillor Legal confirming that Surrey County Council are supporting the Waverley Borough Council, the CNS East Street scheme with funding. It's a very important topic to the residents of Farnham, so I therefore took the opportunity of yesterday sending a simple question to the Chief Executive so that he had advance notice that I was looking for some additional information. I've got to say I was disappointed by the response. I'd like to read it out in anticipation that any executive members present may be able to add further information. The first thing I wanted to know was precisely the source of funding for the project. The answer I got was that Crest Nicholson were responsible for identifying funders for Brightwell scheme, and the funding arrangement is between them and Surrey County Council. As was reported last week, Surrey are funding this to help the economic growth in the country. The second point I asked was, could you please indicate how much would be underwritten by council taxpayers, who is conducting the due diligence process, to what extent the funding has been secured, and what the conditions are? The answer I got was, as Surrey County Council is a separate organisation, I do not have the information on how this arrangement will affect their finances. Similarly, Waverley are not involved in Surrey's due diligence process, so I cannot comment on this, nor can I comment on what extent the funding has been secured or what the conditions are. You would need to approach Surrey County Council directly. I find it very disappointing that this information isn't available and isn't available to members. Thank you.
Councillor Potts, do you wish to make any comment? It's meant to be a question. I don't think there was one.
Yes, thank you very much for the points that you've raised, Councillor Williamson. I think, as Mr. Wenham clearly explained yesterday, and I will reiterate, and we've always also reiterated to the newspaper, that this is a matter for Surrey County Council, and the arrangement and the funding is with them and Crest Nicholson. The matter is obviously commercially sensitive, but as you've also been assured, and I'm happy to reassure members again, you and the group, together with the Conservatives and the Independents, everyone will, when the time comes, receive a full member briefing, and the matter will be brought before Council with all the relevant information. And at this stage, I'm afraid that really is as much as I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's quite clear from what you said and what the Executive Director said. It is a business transaction between Crest and Surrey. It is not, Waverley has no input into that money, where it's coming from. I know there were inaccurate reports in the Farnham Herald, but you know, that's for them to answer. Thank you very much. Anybody else, anything on the forward programme, please? May I take that as agreed? Thank you very much. Item 6 is the Waverley Borough local plan on pages 13 to 18. Councillor Williamson, you have your name down on this one too.
Thank you very much, Leader. I put my name down on some of these before I had time to fully digest the documents, just in case I had some questions. I seem to recall that some Eastern Area members of the Planning Committee had previously been criticised for trying to defend their residents. I recall that it was said, and I think it was by you, Leader, that if they hadn't refused the 420 home Berkeley application at Cranley, we would be achieving the 5-year housing supply, land supply. So now that the inspector has allowed that appeal, what's the position on the 5-year housing supply? I mean, it's such a critical figure, which is used in all the planning debates, that I'd have thought we had a running total and we knew exactly where it was. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think the matter you refer to of the 5-year supply will be something that the officers are working on, because it's a technical calculation and that needs to be made, and as soon as that is made, then members will be made aware. And of course, there's always the possibility of any reviews of any decision of the inspector, so you have to give the necessary time for us to come to a conclusion. Councillor Adams, do you wish to speak on the local plan update?
Thank you, Leader. This relatively short report on pages 13 to 18 covers a lot of ground, and I congratulate the officers on its focus and conciseness. The first point it covers concerns our spatial strategy. We are obliged under the NPPF to make every effort to meet the housing target of 519 new homes per annum allocated to us by the government. I'm well aware that many of our residents accept this target as long as the new homes are not built near them. Hence the majority preference for Dunsfold Park. Unfortunately, Dunsfold Park exists in what is currently an unsustainable location, due mainly to the absence of satisfactory transport links and services. To make it sustainable will take a long time and be very expensive. The owners of the park have requested a development of 1,800 homes, which may be delivered over a 9-year period. This request is currently being considered by our planners and Surrey County Council. Our spatial strategy is assuming it will be found to be satisfactory. If it isn't, it will leave a big hole in it. The strategy relating to all promoted major and sustainable major sites was discussed with all borough councillors in December, and the comments collected are being considered along with the transport and other infrastructure implications. The second point is the development of the plan itself. It consists of 16 chapters excluding the introduction and list of sites plus diagrams and 5 appendices. Members currently have 11 of those chapters for further comment. The remaining chapters are under development during this month. The third point is about transport and infrastructure. Our plan timetable has been based on an agreement with Surrey County Council that provided we gave them the necessary modelling information by the end of December, our transport assessments and reports will be available mid-February. Two issues have arisen that have altered this scenario. One is a strong request from Highways England that they receive a joint report covering Waverley and Guildford together for the A3. And the second is that Guildford data available for modelling in January was about to be outdated by significant alterations, meaning that any model run for us would be outdated before our plan was ready for publication. In view of this, allowing Guildford's new data to be loaded and run as a joint model turned out to be the optimum course for us with a minimum risk to our published plan. The output of the transport modelling may impact decisions relating to developments around Farnham and near the A281 in the Cranley-Dunsfold area. Consequently, the transport reports have delayed consideration of our report by members till the end of June. The fourth point relates to our duty to cooperate. Apart from various meetings with our neighbours, which I've actually been through now, haven't I? 2 agreements are being created to further and de-risk our plans. One is a statement of common ground with Guildford and Highways England, which will cover the underlying transport assumptions, particularly for the A3. This statement of common ground will mean that Highways, when it's agreed, will mean that Highways England will not be raising any objections to our plan. The other is a statement of common ground with Guildford and Woking covering how any shortfall housing numbers by a borough will be handled across our housing market area. Finally, continuing our programme to de-risk the plan, we are arranging for an inspector to review our plan before publication. The recommendation is on page 3.
Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. Councillor Ramsdale.
Thank you, Leah. I too wanted to join in thanking officers for the progress made, and in particular our colleague, Councillor Brian Adams. It sometimes gets disappointing when you realise this target has grown on us and some of these dates have had to move. But I'm very appreciative that we've got to do the work on the mitigations. It requires an awful lot of consultation with other bodies, and the timing of that has to be sorted out with them, and it's unfortunate they've dragged us back on some of these issues. But thank you for the work so far.
Thank you. Anyone else, please? Councillor Denis.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to thank my colleague as well for accepting that Dunsfold is the preferred site of those not affected. I felt like a broken record over the last 12 months saying that, so I'm grateful for that support, and also the fact that he agrees that the site doesn't have the necessary infrastructure and the issues that brings. I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Anybody else, please? Councillor Potts.
Thank you. I think just really to reiterate the point made by Councillor Adams earlier, it's good to see this report before us. It is disappointing that some of the timings have changed, but I don't think any of us in any part of the borough can underestimate the significance of the transport assessments. Whether you're in Farnham, to the east in Cranley, Dunsfold, whatever part of the borough, and we have to make sure that's right. We have to make sure we have the right data, and we have to be sure that before we come before an inspector, we have the data that Guildford and Surrey deem to be the most up-to-date and correct data, so that we have the endorsement not just of our own traffic consultants, but of Surrey County Council and Highways England, and obviously can be shown that we've really embraced the duty to cooperate, and that is crucial. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's absolutely essential. I think the portfolio holder made it quite clear our figures were to Surrey County Council at the time agreed, but it's matters outside of our jurisdiction or control that have slowed this down, and we do need to have that right. And also, I think Highways England are very unsure about improvements on the A3, even in the medium term, and that needs to be taken into account. Item number 6, there was one recommendation. Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 7 is the tenant involvement strategy. There are a number of typos on the agenda papers, but not on the actual coloured report. It is 2016-2019, so every time it says 15-18, those are typos. So if we could amend all of those, but the actual document has the right date on the front. Councillor Williamson, you have your name down for this one.
Thank you very much, Leader. As a new councillor, I'm still trying to get to grips with this. I'm looking for some education, really. There's a budget of £42,500, and basically, I guess the questions I've got are what return do we get for this, and what benefits do the tenants see? I've looked at it a little. I can only see that, looking at the past papers, that the scrutiny panel only seems to have done one thing. It's reported on communal cleaning services in 3 years, which doesn't seem a particularly heavy work burden. And I also understand that there's been previous efforts over many years has failed to find any more than a handful of tenants willing and able to try to work with Waverley on this. So what do we intend to do differently, apart from spend £42,500?
Thank you very much for your comments. Councillor King.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. This strategy should take a little while to come to the table, which explains why the typo with the dates has cropped up. But it highlights the achievements over the past 3 years, and it sets out this council's aims for tenant involvement at Waverley for the future. Tenant involvement provides a forum for co-regulation, challenge, scrutiny and service improvements. The draft strategy also identifies ways that residents can become involved to help shape services, and also highlights successes through engagement with the tenants panel, the Waverley Tenants and Leaseholders Scrutiny Group, resident associations and opportunities for training, and lays out the council's promises for the future in respect of tenant involvement. This strategy, if approved, will be widely circulated, and the service improvement team and community services will work together with the tenants panel to promote the strategy through events at each of our leisure centres. Corporate ONS Housing Improvement Subcommittee endorsed this strategy on the 7th of March. I invite the executive to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other colleagues wish to comment? Thank you. There was one recommendation. Is that agreed? Agreed. 8. Item 8 is staffing changes. Mr. Wenham's just going to leave, then we'll go into that. Staffing changes, item 8 on pages 29 to 34. Councillor Williamson.
I'm very used to this, Leader. Thank you. I'll be very brief. The introduction to this item on page 3 tells us that the aim is to maintain a robust and resilient structure and suitable corporate governance arrangements. I would hope it has said that we wanted to improve, not maintain. And the other thing is, corporate governance has got to be absolutely independent. This is almost like, what we're suggesting is almost like marking your own homework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, you'll see that much of this is set out in the papers, and you'll note that the position that we're discussing, or the monitoring and returning officer, that is due to a full retirement. It is normal practice in councils for the returning officer to be the chief executive, and that is the position that we are looking to move to. With regard to the monitoring officer, when the holder of one of the posts here was, as set out in these papers, was recruited, it was also to be the monitoring officer when the time came. So these are all positions that have been planned over the last several years, and you will see that the lines of reporting have been strengthened, so as set out on page 31, 32 in the agenda, so that you can see the changes and the positions, so that each of these positions will now report as set out in the papers. On page 33 you will see the recommendations. There are 4 recommendations, and we are recommending that that is the position that we move to. I don't want to go into too much detail, because if I start talking about obvious positions in public, we will have to go into exempt, because you can identify who I'm talking about, and we're not permitted to do that. If anybody wants to go into further detail on actual people, and, other than I set out in the papers, then I would have to go into exempt. Colleagues, any further comments? Councillor Ramsdale.
Just briefly to add to your answer to the question that was asked, this is an area of excellence and has been achieved to date, hence the use of the word maintaining. We don't want to spend a lot more money, we want to maintain a quality service for what it costs at the moment. So that's why I think the word maintaining is appropriate, and I'm sure is why the officers involved used it.
Thank you very much. I think you make a very good point, certainly in the last elections, which were a marathon with the general election, the borough and the parishes on the same day. It all ran extremely well, and the officers that will be dealing with it in the future, I don't think we had any criticisms at all, and several of our neighbours did, so we provided an excellent service there. I think you make a very good point.
Chairman, excuse me,
yes.
Would it be appropriate to ask Mr Wenham to return?
Once we've voted, it will, yeah. So, 8, there are 4 recommendations. Are they agreed? Agreed. Agreed. We'll just get Mr Wenham back. Item 9 is Health and Wellbeing Officer, pages 35 to 38. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Leader. I've answered the question myself earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Denis.
Thank you, Leader. On the 16th of February 2016, the Council approved and adopted Waverley's new corporate plan, which has identified community wellbeing as a key priority. It was agreed that the health and well-being of our varied communities is at the heart of everything we do. The priority will be delivered through various mechanisms, and they include providing community leadership to champion the local issues that most affect our residents, by investing in the delivery of a new community facilities, by implementing the health and wellbeing strategy, the action plan to deliver activities and services to improve the lives of Waverley residents, and by implementing the Ageing Well strategy, which will support older people to lead healthy and independent lives. As part of the community's Star Chamber proposals for 2016-17, it was agreed to use savings from the community's staffing budget to fund a health and wellbeing post, which will continue to develop further the health and wellbeing agenda and opportunities. This post will be instrumental in delivering the health and wellbeing agenda and opportunities for the council by the addition of a health and wellbeing post to the establishment using the staff savings arising from the deletion of 2 vacant part-time posts identified within the report. There are 2 recommendations that are shown on page 4 of the agenda and page 37 of your papers, which I recommend to the Executive to support. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any comments? Councillor King.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I very strongly support this, and I'm delighted to see that we've found an opportunity to have a full-time health and wellbeing officer. And I'd like to compliment my colleague on my right for the amount of work that they've done to move this matter forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? In that case, As you've been told, there are 2 recommendations. Item 9, are they agreed? Agreed. Item 10 is the performance management report for quarter 3, 2015-16, which is October to December last year, pages 39 to 62. Councillor Williamson.
I think this is my last one, Leader. I refer to 2B, that due to concerns about the number of planning applications lost at appeal, mandatory training be arranged for all planning committee members to focus on reasons for refusal and ensure robustness of the process. Very much agree with training. More the merrier. I think it's great. However, the issue relating to planning decisions being lost at appeal, in most cases, it's because of the 5-year housing supply has not been met, and that has a major influence on the balance of the decision. This will have no influence on that. Encouragement of this type, i.e., of this type, if you took it to its extreme, that councillors should approve all applications, then we would get 100%. Not a single one would be lost at appeal. It's focusing on the wrong point. I think it's just holding a telescope up to the blind eye. I mean, we know what the problem is, and we're addressing another issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, the training is important because it isn't exactly something that councillors can just decide they don't like something and turn it down, because you have to stay within the regulations. And the 5-year supply is only a consideration. Sometimes members will turn down or on traffic considerations or flooding, and then the inspectorates don't accept that, and there are cases of that. So there are a whole number of issues that can be the result of a decision being overturned. Colleagues, then there are 3 recommendations on the agenda. Now, before we go to those, I'll ask members. Yes, I was just going to say, does anybody want to speak on the proposals A to G or anything else? So, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I agree that training is important, especially actually as the rules are, like the rest of the MPPF, being steadily updated. Our new head of planning has been regularly updating the planning committees on changes to those rules, but of course not everybody is there all the time. I think the other thing that we should note is that the target for majors is changing very soon from an allowance of 20% down to an allowance of 10%. That would put us very close to that government target, which, if we exceed, can allow the government to interfere with us. The inspectorate obviously also are well aware that there should be approval for sites that are sustainable, regardless really if you have a 5-year housing supply or not. And it won't be really until we have the local plan at least published that we do have a more significant protection. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other comment, please? No, then there are 3 recommendations on this performance management report. Item number 10, are they agreed? Agreed. 11 is major works on the council dwelling. Councillor King.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members will note the exempt paper on page 66, so I won't stray to that. But this report relates to a property in need of major works. It's currently void. The works are estimated at a value of £50,000. Once completed, this property can be re-let at an affordable rent, which, as a reminder, is up to 80% of open market value, thus reducing our void loss and bringing a much-needed family home back into use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, colleagues, the detail is set out in Annex number 1, exempt Annex 1, which is on page 65. If anybody wishes to discuss it, we'd have to go into exempt. Anybody? Thank you. No, indeed, there are 2 recommendations. Are they agreed? Agreed. And item 12 is the bank arrangements contract renewals set out on page 67 to 70. Councillor Ramsdale.
Thank you, Leader. This report concerns our banking arrangements. Waverley operates its banking entity through HSBC, and we incur charges for the transactions that are made by the council and its customers. Periodically, the contract terms are reviewed to ensure that they are continue to provide good value. In order to test the competitiveness of the charges, officers have sought the view of independent external market experts. The result of this work and discussions with the bank is that a cost saving will be achieved, as included in the exempt annex. It is recommended that these terms are agreed by the Executive. We, Waverley, also offer customers the ability to make payments in post offices and via the PayPoint network. The facility is handled by a company called AllPay. Again, the terms and charges applying to this contract have been reviewed, and the revised proposals also show a cost saving. As well as noting the cost savings, I can confirm that officers have been pleased with the service provided by both these operators in recent years. So, Leader, I consider the proposal set out in this report to represent excellent value for the Council, and I commend to the Executive the recommendation on page 6 of the agenda and page 68 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and indeed, members, you can see the savings set out on page 69 in the exempt papers. Any comments? Councillor King.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I have concern about AllPay through the post offices. With the threatening closure of a post office within my ward, I hope that alternative arrangements with other providers are being made for AllPay to function. Thank you.
Yes, there does seem a dreadful turn down following government policies to not have post offices, and we should have to be looking at another way, because they are closing, and that will leave. There were 7 in Hazelmere, there will be 1. That is the position, and everybody else will follow suit. So we do need to take account of that without any doubt. Any other comment? 1 recommendation on item 12. Is that agreed? Item 13 is the Executive Director's actions.
Thank you, Leader. No items on this category this month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I now propose that pursuant to Procedure Rule 20 and in accordance with Section 100A, brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the remaining items on the grounds set out in the papers. Is that agreed?